Okay, Mike, you're good to go.
Okay, good morning and welcome to the October 2024 Connecticut Paid Leave Board of Directors meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. It is 9:01. Amber, would you please take attendance?
Yes, thank you, Mike. Ava Bermudez Zimmerman,
Present.
Isha Canada,
Present.
Adrienne Cochran,
Present.
Andrea Comer. I don't believe Andrea has joined us yet, but I'll circle back in just a moment. Sheila Hummel. Sheila,
Present. Present.
I saw you come in there. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Ellen McKitterick.
Present.
All right. Fran and Alice will not be joining us today. David Salazar Austin.
Present.
John Scott will not be joining us today. Mike Soltis.
Present.
Molly Weston Williamson.
Present.
I don't believe Holly Williams has joined us yet, but she will be. We'll circle back in just a moment. Janae Woods Weber
Present.
and Justin Zartman.
Present.
Excellent. So just double checking to see if Holly has joined us yet or Andrea Comer. Not yet, but we do have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amber. I would like to thank the members of the public for joining us this morning. First item on the agenda, I'd like to ask for a review of the September 12, 2024 meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or discussion about those minutes? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain. I wasn't present last month.
Okay, thank you, Justin. The motion carries. Thank you. Moving to the next item on the agenda. Michael, would you please lead us in a discussion of the revised consolidated policies which had been posted in the Law Journal for public notice?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike, and good morning, everybody. So the board may recall that in the August board meeting, we had recommended changes to the consolidated policies. Just going to share my screen for a second. The board did officially adopt, or so did officially vote to post those changes in the August meeting. That posting period was from about mid-August through mid-September, and we did not receive any comments or questions from the public related to those changes. So the recommendation today and the hope is for the board to officially adopt the revisions to those policies. Because there are no changes from what we shared back in August, I don't want to go through every single one in detail. It's sort of old news for you all, but I did want to just sort of recap it really quickly. So there's this one slide that summarizes the majority of the changes. The primary purpose of the revisions were related to the legislative change in Public Act number 24-5, including the definition of municipality, the expansion of family violence leave, as well as the impact to the Connecticut benefit calculation related to state or federal government programs, narrowing it to just be related to income replacement benefits from those programs as opposed to other types of payments they may receive from them. Separate from the legislative changes, we also made a couple changes to the contribution-related policies, including requiring cooperation with any audits that our finance department may make with employers, as well as clarifying the penalty calculation for late contribution submission, as well as requiring good cause for late requests for waivers of those penalties, which pretty much applies to any penalties we have. We also expanded, we expanded the explanation of the process for municipalities and boards of education, should they wish to collectively bargain to participate in the Connecticut Paid Leave Program. We added flexibility to a claimant's regular work schedule, particularly for claimants who don't work a traditional Monday to Friday 9-to-5 job, to make that a little easier for them. We also changed the policy to enhance the process for pregnancy and bonding claims to also make, hopefully, that process a little bit easier for claimants. And then there were general cleanup matters, typos, some citations that were changed due to other policy changes. As I said before, ultimately the goal is to have the board officially adopt these revisions today. But before that, I'm happy to take any questions that the board may have.
Any questions or comments for Michael? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the revised consolidated policies?
So moved, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. May I have a second?
Second, Isha.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Michael. You can continue on to lead us in a discussion of the revised finance and accounting policies.
Thank you again. Not to sound like a broken record, but very similar story regarding the finance and accounting policies. The board saw the revisions back in August. We posted this for the same period as the consolidated policies. Should start from the beginning. The changes for the finance and accounting policies relate to updating the date of the annual report per the legislative change, indicating that credit card expenses are approved through bills spend and expense software, and then some minor changes to formatting and wordsmithing, including clarifying that financial statements are presented to the board rather than approved by the board, removing references to reconciling our admin fees against contribution amounts, because previously we used to have the admin fees tied to a proportion of the contribution we received. Now it's a flat benefit amount, so there isn't that need to reconcile that any longer. Explaining abbreviations, and then updating the internal schedule for the annual operating budget process and the daily deposit journal entry template. That's basically it in a nutshell again. The goal would be to have the board again vote to officially adopt these revisions, but I'm happy to take any questions they may have. For these, I may need to rely on Dave if there are any questions, because if it gets too technical in nature, I'll need his help. So, but opening it up to the board for any questions.
Okay, any questions or comments about the finance and accounting policies? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the finance and accounting policies?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Eva. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on, Jessica, would you please provide the quarterly outreach and engagement update?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. All right. So I wanted to give a recap of what we've done since our last quarterly update and some things that we have coming up for the rest of this month and into November. I won't go through them one by one, but you can see we've been very busy. Huge thanks to our team as well as to some other team members like Amber that have jumped in to help us cover these events. As you can see, we've been all over the state from corner to corner, and we definitely remain focused on making sure that we get to all the different areas. We have had a really great mix of events targeting businesses, healthcare providers, and the general public. Just a couple that I wanted to highlight. We have been participating in and will be continuing to participate in for the rest of the year these events called Fresh Check Days. And this came about through Nicole, our community partnership liaisons, partnership with the Jordan Porco Foundation, which is an organization that helps young adults, college students primarily, with mental health and suicide prevention. And so these are events that we are attending at local community colleges to provide information about Connecticut paid leave. We will be at Manchester Community College, Naugatuck Valley Community College, both the Waterbury and Danbury campuses, as well as a few others. So we're really excited about that partnership. And then just the two others to highlight. New this year for us, we will be at the Connecticut Association of School-Based Health Centers, their conference in November. and the Community Health Center Association of Connecticut conference coming up in Mystic. So we're excited about both of those. An update that I shared with the Outreach and Engagement Committee and wanted to share with the full board as well. You may remember that we had been talking about our creation of user-generated content for use primarily on social media. So these are short sort of vignettes of individuals talking about Connecticut paid leave. They're meant to be very sort of raw, authentic. They're not the super polished, refined, like what you would see on, you know, for a TV ad, and they've been getting a really great response. So we're continuing to build out that library. Some of the topics that we've covered include mental health, focusing on caring for someone related by affinity, foster care, military family leave, and intermittent or reduced schedule leave for caregiving. And the languages that we have created these in include English, Spanish, Polish, and Portuguese thus far. So we will continue to build out this library. Quick update on the Community Education Coordinators Program. This is something that the board approved us to launch as a new initiative. And you may recall that we had issued a request for proposals back in May. So we have selected 7 contractors who we'll be working with. We have executed all of those contracts. And actually today we'll be issuing a press release announcing who those contractors are. You can see the list over on the right side of the screen. A number of different organizations covering many different geographic areas of the state. So we think it's going to be a great mix of organizations. Right now, Virginia is working with the contractors on developing their work plans and budgets. Those are due in November, and she'll be meeting with them individually to review and help them make any tweaks or changes. She's also working on onboarding the administrative aspects of setting the vendors up with Bill.com so they can get paid, creating a Teams channel, explaining to them how that Teams channel works, creating guidance documents, etc. And we have also developed a training curriculum, and the training just commenced this week. We started on Tuesday, the 8th. We're holding the sessions twice per week. So Tuesday mornings and Thursday afternoons will be a repeat of the same training to give options for folks for what'll work best with their schedules. We're also recording those trainings and we're saving them into Teams so that they can refer back. And then we'll hold office hours every Friday, just an open forum for folks to come and ask questions. The training goes through November, and we will be holding an in-person closing training session and also sort of just a kind of meet and launch the program on December 6th. And we also will be assigning a mentor from the benefits team for each organization so that they have a direct liaison to ask questions of. So we'll keep you updated as that progresses, and these organizations will be going out into the world starting in January to begin those outreach efforts. I also wanted to provide an update on a newer initiative that Nancy and Nicole have been working closely on called 5 Minutes of Impact, short but impactful conversations with Connecticut Changemakers. So this is a 5-minute virtual segment with different organizations, allowing them to use the platform to talk about their organization or business, what they do, who they help, and then tying it in with Connecticut paid leave. So the couple that we have released so far include Caring Transitions, which is a small business that focuses on helping elderly and their families as they transition into new living situations. The Wheeler Clinic, CIFIC, which is a community organization in Danbury, where this was our first one. We actually produced both an English version and a Spanish version. And then in September, the Diaper Bank. And so there's been such a great response to community groups wanting to work with us on this that we'll actually be bumping it up to 2 episodes per month starting in January. This has been a really great way for us to, as Nicole goes out and meets with different community groups, we want to really have a collaborative partnership with them. And we want it to be more than just, hey, can you help us get the word out about our organization? But also we want to help you get the word out about your organization, because there's such an intersection between the folks that we're trying to reach and many of these groups are trying to reach. So this has really been very well received by these groups, and we're excited about it and excited to keep it going moving forward. Another thing I wanted to flag, back in June, as you'll recall, Aaron, John, and I went down to DC to participate in the class conference, the convening of paid leave states. And part of that was the DOL Women's Bureau held a sort of mini conference for equity and implementation of paid leave programs. One of the presentations that was part of that was from Brandeis University, and they had done a study of some of the different states' paid leave websites, just an analysis of, readability, accessibility, things like that. So after that, we found it really interesting. So the three of us were able to connect with one of the lead researchers in that study. She is actually an instructor at Harvard as well in the School of Public Health, and she has her students do a similar but more in-depth review of different organizations for health literacy. And so we have been selected by some of her students to serve as the subject for their research. We met with them this week. We've provided some different materials, including our infographics, some specific pages on our website, some of our application documents, and they will be doing that analysis over the next several weeks. And our goal is to be able to use some of the analysis that they provide to make our existing information more accessible and create new outreach materials as well. So it was sort of a happy accident that this came about, but we're excited that they've chosen to work with us and look forward to seeing what they think of our materials and how we can make improvements. Also wanted to share that Connecticut Paid Leave was selected as a top workplace by the Hearst Connecticut Media Group. This was an award selected based on employee feedback from surveys that our staff took in spring of 2024. There were 55 businesses selected throughout the state out of about 2,000. So we're just really excited that we were chosen to be recognized in this way. The questions were about purpose, leadership, collaboration, motivation, growth, etc. So we have promotion in the Hearst Connecticut papers and in Connecticut Magazine. And then lastly, you've heard me talking about the, in terms of our print media, we have partnerships with some different publications where we not only place ads, but also produce articles on different topics, which are then translated into other languages. We work with La Tribuna, which is a trilingual newspaper in English, Portuguese, and Spanish, La Voz Hispana, La Visión, both in Spanish, and White Eagle, which is a Polish language newspaper. So I just wanted to share a list of the topics that we have produced articles about over the course of this year. They range from, FMLA and the differences with paid leave, to the types of leave, the expanded definition of family, information for sole proprietors, and now into some of the different reasons for leave and the nuances that come along with those different reasons. So you see an example of the most recent article, which was about family violence and sexual assault and the expansion of that aspect of our program. And then I also just placed a couple of the digital and print ads over on the right side of the slide. That concludes my updates for today, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jessica. Any questions, comments, observations for Jessica? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the next agenda item. Maddie, would you please give us the legislative update?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm just gonna share my screen. Great, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Great, so I'm here to provide an update on the implementation of Public Act 24.5, an act concerning changes to the paid family and medical leave statutes, which you'll remember passed the legislature in May and took effect on October 1st. So as you know, Public Act 24.5 was our priority last legislative session. The law makes several technical changes to our statute, but today I'm going to cover kind of the key components that required the most outreach and work to implement on our end. So just to refresh everyone's memories, those key components of the law include a new definition of municipality in Connecticut paid leave and Connecticut FMLA, requirement of healthcare providers to display Connecticut paid leave information, an amendment to the Connecticut Family Violence Leave Act to include victims of sexual assault, and establishment of a procedure for tribes to participate in Connecticut paid leave. So much of our work this summer really focused on the implementation of the law's new definition of municipality. Over the last few months, our priority was making outreach to entities that are no longer considered a municipality and are covered employers under Connecticut paid leave and Connecticut FMLA as of October 1st. So first, we work to identify the entities that will be newly covered employers under this new language. That includes housing authorities, transit districts, health districts, and certain libraries. We then work to develop a contact list of these entities, as well as other organizations who would be interested in or affected by this change. And we then made multiple rounds of email outreach. In our outreach, we shared a one-pager on the new definition and what it means to be a newly covered employer, as well as invitations to any relevant webinars or upcoming events that we're hosting, and an offer to meet individually or schedule a meeting or training with our staff. We also collaborated with different associations and unions that represent these entities with the ask to collaborate on a webinar or a training, and for them to share information with their networks or their listservs. So as a result of this outreach, we had several one-on-one conversations and hosted or partnered with organizations on several events over the summer. So we hosted our own webinars in June and September on the changes to the law, both of which were recorded and are available on our YouTube channel. On July 10th, we provided a presentation to the Department of Public Health's monthly call with local health directors about how the change in definition and the change in the definition applies to health districts. In August, we partnered with the Connecticut Library Consortium on a webinar for their members, specifically geared towards association libraries who are no longer considered municipalities and are covered employers, as well as a webinar with CCM for their members as well. Also in August, Erin provided a presentation at the Connecticut chapter of the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials that was specifically focused on housing authorities and their role as a newly covered employer. In all of these conversations, our focus was on what it means, again, to be a covered employer under Connecticut paid leave. However, it also gave us the opportunity to kind of remind folks about how entities that are municipalities can collectively bargain to participate in our program as well. So we've also updated our written materials and on our website to reflect the change in definition of municipality and what it really means. As you can see on the screenshot here, thanks to our IT team, there are new instructions on how to register as a government entity that is no longer a municipality and is a newly covered employer. As I mentioned earlier, we also developed a fact sheet on the change in definition that's available on our website, and a recording of both of our webinars from June and September are available on our YouTube channel. The September webinar provides the most up-to-date instructions on how to register as a new employer, what your responsibilities are, et cetera. So our second focus regarding implementation of the new law was regarding its requirement of healthcare providers to display Connecticut paid leave information in a manner that is accessible to patients and their caregivers. So under Public Act 24.5, healthcare provider has the same definition as Connecticut FMLA, so it's pretty broad. This component of the law is important because we know that healthcare providers, right, in their offices often interact with people who may need our program, but could be unaware of it. Over the last several weeks, we've developed an informational poster in English and Spanish, which you can see on the slide here. And to distribute this information, we collaborated with the Department of Public Health in their licensing system or database. And in mid-September, we were very grateful for them that they sent out our flyer and information about the new requirement to their list of over 74,000 healthcare providers. So here's our vision coming to life in a pediatrician's office in the state. Our information here is displayed on what looks like either like a door or something in either like a waiting room or one of the office's visiting rooms. This is what we envisioned. So we're excited about that. So finally, Public Act 24.5 now covers victims of sexual assault under the Connecticut Family Violence Leave Act, which means a victim of sexual assault would be able to apply to Connecticut paid leave and utilize the 12 days of leave provided under that law. To implement this change, we've updated our written materials and our website to include victims of sexual assault. We're also very excited, as Jess mentioned, that the Alliance to End Sexual Violence is a member of our first class of community education coordinators. And they'll be providing outreach to their members and community on our program as a whole, but with an emphasis right on how it really supports victims and survivors. Lastly, the law also provides a procedure for tribes to participate in Connecticut paid leave through an MOU with the governor. We've connected with the governor's office about this, and we've made outreach to the tribes to begin conversations, and hopefully, I'll have more on this in the months to come. Just a few miscellaneous outreach items. We continue to distribute a monthly legislator newsletters. And since May, we've, included pieces of Public Act 24.5 in that newsletter and information on what we're doing for implementation. We also issued a press release on September 30th outlining these changes, and that is available on our Medium account or page. So yeah, just want to say thank you. Thank you to Aaron, of course, as well as our legal, our IT, finance, and outreach teams. Everyone's worked to really implement the various pieces of the new law. So thank you.
I have a couple questions, Mike, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
So, and thank you, Maddie, for that great update. I appreciate it. And so, Aaron, I don't know if these are maybe for you or for Maddie, I'm not sure. But I have two questions. The first is related to what you just shared at the end. And honestly, I could go and refresh myself with the Public Act, but can you just confirm for me, if you're a victim of sexual assault or domestic violence, do you have to be, are you only eligible if you're employed with an eligible employer? Or are you in a priority class?
So for the 12 days of job protected leave, it's really all employers. It's a separate statute from FMLA. So the definition of employer under 3151 SS is broad. To be eligible for the benefits under our program, you still have to work for an employer who's covered under our program.
Okay, so I think that that's really important that legislators know, because I think that, and this relates to my next question, actually. So I think it's wonderful we're doing outreach at pediatrician's office, OBGYNs, all of the various places where there's a touch point and a voice for people who may not otherwise know about this service, because one thing government's not good at is advertising, what we do. So related to the first question that I asked, who's out now? Because it's an interesting quandary, right? That we're expanding specific life events, right? But we still have this group of employers that are not in, even though the employee is the payer of the benefit, right? The purchaser of the benefit, right? So who's out?
Right. Just to clarify, if you work for a non-covered employer, you do not pay into the program. So
right, but I'm saying like it's not an employer purchase benefit, right? Yeah. So I guess my question is, who's still out?
Who's out? Yep.
And do we have a good faith basis for keeping them out?
Well, I'll be able to answer the first part.
All right, we'll table my second part. We'll table my second part, right? Because if there was a legal issue, we would have addressed the legal issue. So who's out?
So The federal government is out because states can't tell the federal government what to do under the Supremacy Clause. So
Right.
constitutional basis on that one. Under Connecticut FMLA and Connecticut paid leave, they exclude employees of municipalities, but we now have a narrower definition of municipality. But entities that have the ability to levy and collect taxes are still considered municipalities. Their employees are still out unless their unionized employees collectively bargain to come in which case the members of that union are in, as well as any non-union employee of the municipality. Boards of education, both local and regional boards of education, are out. Same caveat, if a unionized, if a collective bargaining unit within the board bargains in, the non-union folks come in. Private elementary and secondary schools are out. This has been true of Connecticut FMLA since it was first enacted in the 90s. We can only assume that there was some sort of legislative intent to treat all teachers the same, but that's sort of lost in the history of legislative intent. Unionized employees of the state of Connecticut do not participate in the Connecticut paid leave program unless they bargain in. To date, none have done so. Non-union employees, by which I mean folks who are not covered by collective bargaining, so managers, confidentials, appointed officials, judicial, legislative, or judges, there are unionized folks in judicial, all of the legislative branch, are included in the program. But if they are in a position that is covered by collective bargaining, they are not. That's for Connecticut paid leave. The 2017 CBAC agreement put all the state employees covered by FMLA. And then railroad employees are exempt from state laws because of various federal laws relating to railroads. So we exclude railroad employees as well. So in terms of things that the state legislature could change, they could make changes to municipalities, boards of education, private schools, and the state unionized workforce. They can't do anything about the federal pieces. I will say there's renewed discussion about a federal paid leave program. And sort of, we will see what happens over the next several months to see if something moves forward in 2025. But all previous versions of federal language that I've seen, and Molly knows more about this than I do, so please jump in, would eliminate exemptions. So that's something we're certainly paying attention to, because if the feds have it, then, you know, the whole supremacy clause goes away.
Okay. That's helpful. And how many boards of ed have, there are some boards of ed
One.
that have now one.
Yeah, we have one. And that, as Maddie said, we've tried to provide greater information on our website and in our training situations to let people know that there is an ability for people to bargain in. Kind of our information till now has said, you're not in unless you bargain in. Now we're providing a little bit more information about what that means.
And other than state law's distinction, is there any other legal framework tying union and non-union decisions? It seems a little, I just want to understand if it's just a state statute construct or if there's another construct.
It's just a statute.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate you laying that out for me.
Sure.
Okay. I see Molly's hand up. Molly?
Thanks. I was just gonna say, for context in relation to other states that have paid leave programs are really mixed about public sector workers, particularly localities. So some have them completely out unless they bargain to opt in, like some have folks who are only in through an opt-in or an opt-out process. So there's a real mix about public sector workers. I think it takes the most words to explain Connecticut's system because of the tie to non-union workers, but as thinking about peer states, some kind of complex or bargaining dependent system for public sector workers is not unusual. The private school exception is much more unusual. And again, that's I think, as far as I'm aware, it's just completely a legacy of Connecticut FMLA. That is something that is not typical. New York has a more limited exception for some private schools, but basically all other state paid leave programs don't treat private school teachers differently than any other nonprofit employee. But the public sector worker thing is not, it's not necessarily good, but it's not unusual compared to peer states.
Thank you. That's
Okay,
helpful.
thank you. Justin?
Aaron, can you tell us what the Board of Ed that is participating in the program, which one is that in Connecticut?
Michael, can you tell us?
Let me just get off mute. Yeah, it's Voluntown Board of Ed, and it's actually a partial participation. I don't believe it's their teachers. I believe it's the sort of support staff.
Okay.
So in that case, it's all the non-union employees of the Board of Education of Voluntown and that particular union at the Board of Education, but not the teachers union at Voluntown schools.
So then can I just ask a clarifying question now that you said that? Because I want to make sure I understand. So did the unionized membership have to give permission to the non-unionized group? Okay, so
They come
okay,
in.
so got it. Okay.
It's a automatic. So as long as any one bargaining unit participates, then all non-union folks under that
Got it.
employer participate in the
Okay.
public sector space.
Got it. Got it. I'm good now. I just
Okay.
thought I appreciate you allowing me some grace to ask these questions, because as we start to expand to things like specific traumatic events and things like that, and we raise our voice about the availability of the program, I think it's just important for us to be mindful about who's still out, because while we all can appreciate the semantics within state law and can appreciate the sovereignty of the right to bargain and things like that, I just want to make sure that there's that we just are mindful still that there are some people who can't avail themselves of the program. So.
Absolutely. And Jess will correct me if I'm wrong, but at least my impression that the bulk of the social media negative comments are from people who are primarily teachers who can't participate and are sort of upset that they can't participate. And we absolutely understand that.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the committee reports. And I'll go first. Our Policy and Personnel Committee met this month, and we discussed the 2 sets of policies that the board adopted a few minutes ago. So that was our agenda. Moving on, Molly, do you want to provide the outreach and engagement report?
Sure, this can be extra speedy. We met last month, but since we just had our substantive update as a board from Jessica and Maddie, I think we've well covered the content from that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Holly, Finance and Audit Committee?
Yes, thank you. We met last month, and Dave is going to, he provided us with an update on the audits, and we went through the financials, and he's going to take you all through the financials today.
Thank you, Holly. Good morning, everybody. Going to share the financials on screen. And we're going to talk about the results for October. And here we go. So we'll start off with the operating account as usual. The results for the month of August were a negative $963,000. That was $426,000 better than expected for the month. Typical expenses were spent by the authority, payroll and related expenses, contact center. We had our quarterly grievance adjudication expense, which is what we pay our partners at DOL for the appeals work they do for us. Outreach expenses, which just went over a little while ago. And so for year to date, our results are $3.1 million compared to $2.2 million. So we're $919,000 ahead of budget year to date for the 2 months year to date, fiscal year to date so far. For our bond account, we spent over $86,000 for continued work on our fund recovery systems. That was a little over $13,000 better than we expected to spend. And year to date, we're about $113,000 ahead of budget there. That leaves us with about just a little under $2.3 million of bond money that is available to the authority. And we expect to use that money in the coming months on fund recovery and possibly other initiatives as well. Moving on to contribution activity, we had a negative $40.5 million of net activity for the month, and that was $5.3 million less than budget. The main driver of that was benefits paid. We are still seeing an increased amount versus what we budgeted about 6 months ago. So it was almost $42.4 million. That may be higher than what you're used to seeing. That's because we had 5 weeks of reimbursement to AFLAC for the month. That averages to about $8.5 million a week. And so that's basically where we've been for the past couple of months in terms of spending for benefit payments. In terms of other things happening in the contribution budget, we had contributions come in of $590,000. There was a positive variance there of over $316,000. Our fund recovery efforts were $384,000. That's $157,000 better than budget. Investment income was $2.8 million. That was over $909,000. The investment rate in the STIF account was 5.4%. It's been that way for the past few months, but as you know, the Fed lowered rates in September, and so we have seen the investment rate in the STIF account start to decrease during the month of September. But we still expect to be ahead of budget in the next few months despite that. And then last but not least, our typical benefit administrative fees to AFLAC were $1.9 million. So year to date, we are less than budget at about $6.5 million. Again, the main driver of that are benefits paid. We are working with Spring, our actuaries, and in the coming months, we'll be providing a projection to update what we think the benefits are going to be for the rest of the year and what the impact will be on the budget. So stay tuned for that as we get more information. The contribution fund itself is over $604 million. So still in a very positive state, obviously. As far as the balance sheet goes, over $629 million of assets. Again, the biggest one is the STIF account, which I just mentioned previously. Other things in the balance sheet are fixed assets that roll forward from the year, $17 million in the impressed account that we have at AFLAC for them to make the benefit payments, and cash funds available for the bonds and for the operating reserves to pay operating expenses. Quick view at September, $1.1 million of operating expenses, nothing unusual there. Benefit payments were $33.2 million. We reimbursed AFLAC for 4 weeks this time, as we typically do. The average per week went down slightly to $8.3 million a week. The main driver of that was really because September has Labor Day, And so when you have a holiday like that, there's a week when benefits are go down lower than a typical week because nobody's filing new claims because they're enjoying the holiday. And then they usually typically pick back up the following week. So we'll see what happens in October as it progresses and see what the trend shows there. Contributions for September were as expected, about $696,000. Light month, bigger month will be this month in October, and investment income was $2.5 million. Again, despite the interest rate in the STIF account starting to decrease, it averaged about I want to say about 5.25 for the month of September. So that's where we are for the current period. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions for Dave? I don't see any. Thank you, Dave, for your report.
You're welcome.
And we move to Aaron. Would you please provide the CEO report?
Certainly. So the first thing I would like to do is wish the board a happy 5th anniversary. We had our very first board meeting on October 4th, 2019. It was in person. It started at 8:30 in the morning. I don't know what we were thinking. And it lasted the full 2 hours. You can tell from this agenda, we had a lot to do in that first meeting. I just want to point out that Mike, Molly, Justin, Adrian, Ava, as well as Fran and John were all there at that first meeting. It's pretty impressive that 5 years in, we have so many of our inaugural members. We did not have any staff in 2019. The authority was being incubated by DAS. So together with Tracy Knapsack and Chantel Vars, who at the time was at DAS, although she's now Deputy Commissioner at DSS, but Tracy, Chantal, and I were assigned to try and get this crazy thing up and running, and staff the board, try and get everything moving. You will see that one of the many things we did that day was create the posting for the CEO position, which led us to bringing Andrea on board. It's been a really busy 5 years. We've done an enormous amount just in getting the program up and launched. We have paid benefits to over 130,000 workers. From 0 employees, we now have 45 employees on staff, working to handle the contributions, reconciliations, make sure that the program is working smoothly, make sure that people understand the program. And I really want to thank the board. We make you do a lot. I think we make you do a lot more than a lot of other volunteer boards might make you do. We know that, and we absolutely appreciate your support, your attention, and your willingness to dig in when we have policies, questions, issues that we need to really address. So just wanted to take that moment to say thank you, and again, happy anniversary. In addition to that, I wanted to share some of the work that we're doing with other paid leave programs. As Jess mentioned, we participated in a convening in June that brought together the paid leave states as well as a number of advocacy organizations, and then the Federal Department of Labor. Ellen and I went to New Orleans a couple of weeks ago for a National Association of State Workforce Agencies. The NASWA has implemented a paid leave working group. The Department of Labor is the state's participating member in NASWA. They're kind enough to bring me in into NASWA because we're the only ones that don't have our paid leave program sort of housed within Department of Labor. So Connecticut DOL is kind and brings me along. But we had a really great meeting with NASWA. We're looking forward to that association with them. And then we're also working with CLASP, which is a national advocacy organization, and really trying to work together as the 14 states plus DC that either have or developing paid leave programs to learn best practices, to try to identify some commonalities, and to help new states and the federal government come along. Some of the things that we're working on include actually defining our terms. We are all different. And sometimes the differences have to be kind of looked for, because on the surface it seems like we're same. We're trying to, for example, identify administrative costs for running these agencies so that we can actually compare apples to apples. Some states don't handle their own contributions. Some, like us, do. Some states have a waiting period. Others don't. So we're really trying to identify where we're similar, where we're different, and be able to develop some metrics so that policymakers in other states and on the federal level will really understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and to identify kind of where we can all learn from each other. So that's been a big push for us. I just wanted to share that work. And to thank Molly for her advocacy, both on the national level, but also for making sure Connecticut's voice and experience is heard in these meetings. So happy to take any questions.
Questions for Aaron? I just want to make one comment, which is to congratulate the leadership team on being named one of the top employers in the state. That's really quite an honor, especially for such a young organization. So congratulations on achieving that.
Thank you.
Okay, any old business? Is there any new business? Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, second?
I'll second. Holly.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. It is 9:53. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day.